Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Britt Kanawha West Hancock Athletics Podcast. Dan Kroll here for episode 81. And tonight I have two former athletes from West Hancock, especially in football, Jeff and Brighton Kudej. How you doing tonight, guys?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Yeah, they're excited. I asked them; they're not terribly nervous, so we're good to go, ready to rock. So, before we talk some West Hancock football, though, I need to recognize my 17 sponsors for tonight's episode. Like always, the sponsorship money goes towards the Sanger Legacy Fund. Always takes a few extra minutes to go through those sponsors, but well worth our time and efforts getting these sponsors lined up. So thanks to Nick Schmidt, Paul Hauge, In His Image Photography, and Red, White, and Brew Coffee Shop by Ashley Mosier, Levi Don Trucking, Linda Hughes, Miller and Sons Golf Cars, Jay Hiscox of State Farm Insurance, Window World, Ann Hagen, Swenson's Hardware, Nikki Riedesill, Realtor and Hairstylist, the Britt Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruise, Katie's Salon and Tanning, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Triples B's Food Truck, Advanced Door Systems in Forest City, and Doug and Kathy Zool. And I also want to bring up that August 11th is the West Hancock Alumni Banquet. Contact Bill Frito to sign up for that. And then August 25th is the West Hancock Hall of Fame ceremonies. I just talked to Dick Govig, the first ever state wrestling champion in Britt West Hancock history. He's 90, living in Arizona, and I just got confirmation that he and his son are going to fly from Arizona to Britt for that night for those ceremonies. So that'll be a lot of fun. And knock on wood, the track project at the school gets done so we can have that first football game at home. Anyway, the Sanger Legacy Fund is used to fund things like the West Hancock Hall of Fame. We give scholarships, we support athletic and activity funds, anything at the school that needs money, anything out in the community. So make sure you go to sangerstrong.com to give, or if you'd like to sponsor the podcast, get a hold of me. On my Way Back When segment, 50 episodes ago, in episode 31, I talked to Gene Guenther, a longtime Britt native and resident. It was a lot of fun talking to him about wrestling and football back in the 60s. All right, I'm going to hit a few sponsors here, then we're going to get started with the Kujes. Thanks to Jay Hiscox, State Farm Team in Britt, for supporting West Hancock and the Sanger Legacy Fund. Give him or Lindsay a call at 843-3563. Nikki Riedesill is now a realtor for Deemer Realty as well as a hairstylist in Kanawha. Contact her at 762-3745 or at 641-430-9098. And then thanks to Levi Don Trucking. Levi sponsored a whole bunch of these episodes and is continuing to do so. Contact Levi at 641-860-0077. Thanks to Linda Hughes as well for sponsoring. And then Nick Schmidt is a 2000 West Hancock grad and always is giving back to the Sanger Legacy Fund and his community. All right, guys, here we go. Again, I have Jeff and Brighton Kudej. Brighton just graduated high school and is going to be moving on to college football. And Jeff played just a handful of years ago, finished up his playing career in 1990, if I have that off my head correctly. Both studs, played for both of the Sangers, the head coaches, Mark and Bob. Let's start with some introductions here quick. Brighton, how about you tell us what your plans are? I already mentioned college football, but where's that going to be?
Yeah, so I'll be playing at Dort, and that's in Sioux Center for those who didn't know. And I'll be playing like a stand-up DN linebacker type deal and studying ministry and missions work. So
nice. Jeff, what's keeping you busy these days?
Well, I been teaching for the last 15 years at West Fork High School in Sheffield as a industrial tech teacher and junior high exploratory teacher. My wife, Robin, teaches here at West Hancock as an instructional coach. We have 4 kids. Our oldest is Bryce. He's married to Alex, and they live down in Indiana. Next one's Paige. She's going to be a second year in college. And then Brighton here. And then our last one, Mira, she's going to be a sophomore this year. Just in general, for Robin and I, we love the outdoors, biking. We used to do a lot of running, half marathons. Just an outdoors person all around.
West Fork, how long of a commute is that?
47 minutes one way.
That's not, I thought it would be more than that. What town is is that in Sheffield then?
That's Sheffield. Yep.
I thought it was longer than that, a longer drive, but yeah, I still got you beat. I drove from Indianola to Nottoway Valley for 2 years. That was 57 miles each direction, and I got tired of that, especially with two babies at home. So glad that we're 2 minutes from our school now. So, all right, what we're gonna do tonight, we're gonna compare and talk about kind of together in tandem each of your 4 football seasons. So we'll like talk about Jeff's freshman season and then talk about Brighton's freshman season, and just in general also just talk about West Hancock football, West Hancock school and athletics coaches and all that. Because you two are big parts of the program over the last 30 some years now, and just want to talk about all those things and give all those people some shout outs, tell some good stories, and have a little fun doing it. So let's start with your freshman season. Jeff, I have no stats for you in 1987, but that team, the varsity team, went to the state championship game and lost to some school named Grundy Center. I'm sure Brighton's heard of Grundy Center.
Yep.
What do you remember about that freshman year? I'm assuming you played mostly JV. Did you get on any varsity? Do you remember, did you get to dress for that championship game at all?
If you step 1 year back previous to that, I just want to say Coach Timmerman in junior high was basically the coach for all boys sports. And I started out as a tackle in 7th grade. And thank God in 8th grade, he gave me the opportunity to try fullback. And I just fell in love with that position. And it stuck with me in high school. So I just want to shout out and tell Coach Timmerman and how much I thank him for the opportunity just to get the chance to play fullback, because I originally started out as tackle. But anyways, back to the freshman year.
Can I cut you off real quick?
What's that?
I'm going to cut you off real quick here. Are you saying a kid from Britt liked playing fullback? Like, that's surprising news to me.
It just, for me, my 7th grade year, playing lineman, it didn't click for me like others. It just didn't feel like the right fit. But that 8th grade year, when he gave me that opportunity right out of the first game of the season, it just felt really natural, comfortable. And I got to play that the rest of my high school years. So
and that's
I'm
another
just
reason
so thankful for that. Yeah.
Another reason Jim Timmerman's going into the Hall of Fame this year for all the things he did in junior high ranks and up into high school ranks, and athletic director, and all the contributions he made to the program, all the programs at Britt and Kanawha. So yeah. So what do you remember about that freshman year? Did you play some JV then in '87?
So JV year, my freshman year, I got to dress in the playoffs. Didn't get to play at all. They had a really good varsity team, and I just remember watching Pat Kelly play fullback, and just the amount of talent that was in that 86, 87 team. Just phenomenal players. And I remember back, I think it was my freshman year maybe, or 8th grade, one of those two, when Marty Gopel, Tony Boothroyd, the Finch brothers, Vance Hagen, those guys played, was it Akron Westfield? They played Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
It's a very windy, cold day. I remember being at that football game and just the excitement, the crowd. And I just remember somebody this year was talking at the football game. They knew somebody from the opposing team that day, and they said they thought how crazy our guys were. Like Vance Hagen and the linemen came out either with no shirts on, just their jerseys or T-shirts, and that alone kind of set the opposing team back a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
those guys were a good team to watch, and I really enjoyed watching Pat Kelly play. And just the whole team itself was just, what West Hancock football was, or Britt football was back then. I got to dress and go to the dome and watch them play there too. But again, just the amount of talent there, it was just a treat just to stay on the sidelines and watch them play.
Yep, definitely. Brighton, 2019 was your freshman season. 2019, not a bad year. Also, ended up in the dome in this championship game, Grundy Center. But this time, West Hancock won that game 21-17. And that also was Coach Bob Sanger's last game. So you only got to be under Coach Sanger for 1 year. And technically, he was ill at the time, so didn't really wasn't hands on as much as he would have liked to been. What do you remember about that freshman year in 2019, ending with a championship?
Well, first off, I just remember like how big they were, like their whole line and their running backs and everything. You come from being in 8th grade playing against middle schoolers to being with guys that are 18, 19 years old, 230, 250 pounds. So that's a big difference. And then I guess like just how talented they were and how like they had like a certain fire about them, I guess, like a certain aggression that is just like special and that like rubs off on you.
Yeah. At practice, did you guys, everyone lined up against everyone? Did they keep the younger guys separate from the older guys? Was that?
Well, sometimes like obviously if you're doing like first team O versus scout team D, usually it'd be like upperclassmen, or sometimes you like I got thrown in there sometimes, and I remember I was on scout team for defense and I was playing tackle, and that they ran a play and they pulled the guard, and I was the one getting trapped and I didn't see it coming. I just got lit up and put on my back. So,
Yeah.
but
Because when I was in high school during individual drills, it didn't matter if you were a freshman or a senior. Whoever was next up was next up. And you might know the guy, but one of my first days of practice, I had to do a one-on-one lineman drill with Ryan Johnson, one of your coaches. And Coach Johnson was a first-team All-American at Central in 2005. And in 2013, we played an alumni game, or he did. I was the assistant coach at Central. And the head coach at Central said him and Mark Sanger were the two best players on the field that day, and that included the college kids. So yeah, it was whoever was lined up across from me, you went with, and we would count. I'd be the fourth one in line, and I'd look over on that side, and I'd count and offer kids money to trade spots with me. So that was, yeah, that's why I asked, because like Chandler Redenius, Tristan Hunt, Cox kid, there were some dudes on that line all across. So it was a fun team to watch. So much talent. How was your JV season? I'm assuming you played a lot of JV that year?
yeah, uh, it was. I think we lost 2 games that year. We lost to St. Ansgar, and that game was like 98 degrees and 100% humidity. Like it was,
That was that St.
we had no AC on the bus ride there, and then we had to instantly get dressed and go out on the field. So it was just rough from the start.
Yeah.
And then we played Dyke New Hartford here, and I'm still mad about that game. Like that game was probably one of the best games I've ever played in. It was just competitive on both sides, and yeah, we lost by a touchdown, I think.
Yep.
So
How'd we end up playing Dyke New Hartford in JV? Do you remember what happened there? Like, how'd that get on the
Dyke
schedule?
that or Mark? It was either Coach Sanger or Dyke wanted to come over here and play us.
yeah,
It was not in the schedule or something. I remember that game. It was basically down to the end of the game. Basically, it was anybody's game, and for us to control most of that game, it was having a son out there playing. It was a really fun game to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, because we played them in 2002 in the Dome in the quarterfinals my sophomore year, and it was a back and forth wild game, and they passed it 40 times. So that's a jaunt from Britt to Dyke. So I saw that, and I was like, that's a little bit of a interesting game on the schedule you don't typically see. Even St. Ansgar, a lot of times, I don't think we played them much in anything back in the day in JV or in junior high or anything. So, question for both of you though: your freshman year ended in the Dome in a championship game. How'd that motivate you guys for going on into the next couple years of football. Brighton had to have felt pretty good to win a title and be like, I want to do that myself when I get older. Jeff, you got to witness a loss. Did that fuel the fire a little bit or motivate you, or how'd that make you feel?
Oh yeah, it made me want, as a player, part of the team, I wanted to go back there the next year. I mean, it just was just to be there on the field, go through pregame warm up, get to watch them play. It's a different atmosphere when you're on the field, and yeah, it definitely got a fire underneath of us to want to get back to there again.
Yep. How about you, Brighton?
Well, I'd say the same thing. Like I said earlier, you come from playing middle school football, and it's just no. Everyone knows you're a football player, but there's not really like perks behind it or whatever. But you start winning games in high school and start winning in the playoffs and stuff, and like people start, or like the cheerleaders start giving you gift baskets, and like some of the teachers start making all these cookies and everything, and then you're playing in the dome, and then you win the championship, and you get a nice ring, and you get a hat and everything, and it just it makes you realize that like your hard work does pay off, and that you can like get something from playing your heart out and everything, and that's worth it in the end.
Yep. And you guys, and me included, obviously, I played back in the day, but to have so much support from the community and the alumni and stuff, we'll get to that further, I'm sure. But like just the thousands and thousands of people that either come to the game or watch on the live stream, people that pay attention and know what's going on. I think sometimes we take for granted in Britt and Kanawha just how special that is, because I've been in other schools where I've said this on other podcasts. I'd talked to someone going, oh, I was really ticked. Some guy broke my record from high school the other day. I'm like, why are you mad about someone breaking your record? He goes, oh, I always wanted to keep that record, or we had the most wins and then someone got that and I was ticked because I wanted us to be there. I'm like, you're rooting against your, alma mater, or then you also get the people that are like, oh, I haven't paid attention if they've won a game in the last 20 years. I could care less, Not that way in Britt and Kanawha. We have quite the support system and a lot of people that keep up on what's going on in the program. So pretty
I was
special.
going to say, as a athlete, when we played and all the way up to when Brighton played, just the support from the communities to make those Thursday night meals in the playoffs,
Yeah.
and the parents during the regular season, giving up their time, and coming together for that fellowship and having that meal for the kids on that Thursday night. It takes a community, like Coach said. It's a village, and definitely we all come together to support the same purpose of these young men. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
neat to see that that's been carried on since back in the late '80s, to now. So it's a big thing.
It just keeps on going. All right, I'm going to have a few sponsors here, and then we'll talk about sophomore season. Thanks to Swenson's Hardware and Britt for sponsoring the podcast. They're your local independently family-owned hardware store since 1977. Check them out at swensons.doitbest.com. Thanks to Doug and Kathy Zool for sponsoring this episode. Triple B's Food Truck, owned by Brett Kozlerich. I'll actually be working for Brett the next 3 days in the New Virginia Old Settlers days down here. Brett was my student teacher. He now teaches at Panorama, and he has 4 food trucks that he owns for a handful of years now, and best fresh tenderloin you'll ever have. So contact Brett at 641-895-0885 if you want to book him at your next event. Thanks to Advanced Door Systems in Forest City. Call them at 641-585-1900 for all your overhead door needs. That's Advanced Door Systems in Forest City. And then thanks as always to Michael Ewing of Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company with locations in Britt, Kanawha, Clarion, Belmont, and Dow's. Contact them at 843-3839 or 762-3211, or check them out at ewingfh.com. All right, sophomore seasons. Jeff, for you, that was 1988. You guys made it back to the Dome that year, but in the semifinals. You beat Ida Grove 30-28 in the first round, beat Akron Westfield 27-14 in the quarterfinals, and then again that team called Grundy Center showed up and beat us 14-7 in the semifinals. Individually, Jeff, that was kind of your breakout year. Back then, not a lot of sophomores were in that feature fullback role, but you were. You carried the ball 202 times for 990 yards and 8 touchdowns. Steve Kelly was second on that team in rushing with 793. The joke we always tease Kevin Sanger because he had 10 rushing touchdowns that year as the quarterback. And I think Jeff Sanger said it once. Yeah, he had 10 rushing touchdowns and like 13 yards or something like that. Said everything was at the goal line at the one. But yeah, any good reason to give Kevin a hard time, we'll do it. You also had one catch that season for 9 yards, and he scored 54 points. What was that like for you to step into that major varsity role as a sophomore?
Well, as a sophomore coming in and getting the opportunity, I was nervous looking at those senior guys, especially like Greg Byers, Kevin Sanger, Phil Jurdy. Those guys just like you wanted to be on your A game the whole time for them. And the one thing that really stands out in that season was the Garner game. That's always been our big rival, hometown, where the two hometowns come together. That game was at Garner. My dad worked for Imel and Tool at the time. And leading up to that game, he would tell me at night, the Garner people, the Britt people were making comments back and forth and just good, nothing mean, but, talking the other town up. But the thing I really strongly believe that lit a fire underneath of us was, I think that was Garner's homecoming night. And either it was their cheerleaders or some of their student body came over that Thursday night and did a little vandalizing around the school. Nothing major. I won't get into detail, but that next day when we saw what they did, it just, started the whole thing.
Yeah.
I remember going into the multi-room at 5:00, and as a sophomore, not one word was said.
Yeah.
Nobody spoke a word. We got dressed at the high school, and we got on the bus. Helmets were on, heads were straight forward. Nothing was said on that ride to Garner. It was just dead silent. Everybody looked straight ahead, no screwing around. It was just game on. And we pull into Garner and we park the bus maybe between the home bleacher and the gate coming on the field right there. And I remember before we got off the field, Coach Schumacher, or before we went onto the field, Coach Schumacher for Garner got on our bus and apologized for what happened. Great that he said it, but we were still ticked off.
Yeah.
And I just remember when we took that field, we had a mission that night. And Garner had Rick Hansen, which was their big fullback, and they thought they were just going to destroy us. And when that game started, both sides of the field, I have never seen that many people at a football game. It just lined down the whole side. Brett Garner, it just like the whole town, both sides came to watch.
Yeah.
And it's just I went back on YouTube and watched that football game again. And somebody made a comment like, I think Kevin Sanger had like between 9 and 11, 12 something quarterback sneaks in that game. And we scored on I think, don't quote me, but I think Steve Kelly might have been the first one to score for us in the first quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, we were marching the ball down, Steve and I were, and we got within 10 yards, maybe less it was, and Kevin they did 3 quarterback sneaks in a row. And I think we were within a yard or 2 yards of the goal line, and we just couldn't get in. And then all of a sudden, Bob on fourth down does his old bread and butter 245 dive.
Oh, yeah.
That was right behind Greg Byers on the line, and Steve Kelly was my leading halfback. And I just remember Kevin gave me the ball. His hand went on my back, and somehow we found the hole. And I remember and Hagen, her air horn going off,
Yeah.
and just the electricity, just, it's hard to explain. It's just the amount of people cheering and screaming and for the team, and it was just a great feeling. And so we beat them 14-0, I think it was, and we held Rick Hansen. I mean, he was used to getting upper 100-yard rushing, 2 to 3 touchdowns a game, and didn't score a touchdown, low yards. Give that credit to our linemen. They did an awesome job that game. And game was done. We got right back on that bus and left. It was just, we're out of here.
See ya.
So just a phenomenal game to be there. I always remember that game. It's just, but that year we had 2 losses to Osage and to Northwood Kensett, and that's where I caught my one pass on. I think it was a, what do you call it, 236 bootleg pass. Kevin just gave me the ball. I mean, we ran that play once in a while, and that I was open for it, caught it. Just if you looked at that conference, every team was big. It was a good feeling that we came over to Forest City and kicked the crap out of them. Again, they were, what were we, like a 1A school, and they were 2A or 3A at the time?
Yeah, 3A up until just not that long
3A.
ago.
So that was a really good feeling to go there and shut them out. And then going into the playoffs, we went off to Ida Grow. I think we got out of school early for that game. And again, they were a really good team. Again, I give credit to our linemen, Brian Nedved and Greg Byers. I think there was Travis Hagen, Scott Mendesurup, and myself that were the 3 sophomores that got to play varsity that year. And so we're down there, and it was a long drive to get over to Ida Grove. And at halftime, I went to Coach Timmerman, and I said, something's wrong with my shoulder. And so he gave me 2 ibuprofen, shoved a knee pad up underneath my shoulder pads, and slapped it once, said, you're good to go for the second half. And I mean, we came back, we were down, we came back and won that game. And next morning, my mom took me to the hospital, got an x-ray, and sure enough, I had a hairline fracture in my shoulder from that game. So that next game at Pocahontas we played, he shoved another knee pad up in there, gave us more ibuprofen. I just remember that the other team showing up in a double-decker bus. I'm like, what in the world is going on here? And their team, it was all about tricks, spreading the defense, throwing a lot of passes, a lot of different formations. But again, we came out and our defense and offense did a nice job of stopping them and winning that game by a couple touchdowns, I think.
Yeah, 27-14, I believe.
Yeah. But then I remember leading into the Grundy game at the Dome. Coach Singer had us practice in the gym a little bit to kind of get us used to the heat. I remember Marty Gopel was telling me just this last weekend when they were there in '86 for the championship. He said how hot it was compared to being out in the cold. So the transition for us wasn't as bad, but they only scored 2 touchdowns. I think it was the second quarter. In first, third, and fourth, they didn't score anything. We scored 7 in the fourth. But the thing that stands out in that game to me, that Joe Chisholm, I think that's how you say his name. He went to play for USC and went on to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That guy on the opening kickoff, the ball bounced. I took maybe 4 or 5 steps, looked up, and I was leveled. I never was hit that hard in my life. And that guy was the real deal. I bounced up real quick because I didn't want nobody to know that I just got leveled by this guy. And sure enough, first play Bob calls was a 245 dive. And I'm just sitting there going, I can't even think straight, and I'm going to run the ball. So
You didn't
But
run over to Timmerman first and get 2 ibuprofen before that, or no?
not that time, no. But that was all three. Steve Kelly, myself, Ricky Sanger, which was a freshman at the time, played in that game. We just didn't. It came down to a battle of defense, and our defense did a really nice job keeping us into that game. I think toward the very end of the game, Kevin threw a pass to Joel Jurdy. We almost caught it. We could almost tie that game, but it was a hard fought game against those guys. But those senior guys, I just remember in the morning, 6:30 in the morning or something, we'd always run to Perkins and back. And then after that 2-mile run, you go in the gym and you would do sprints. And after sprints, maybe Coach Sanger was in there and you run plays.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the tradition. And then Ann Hagan would always have breakfast on Thursday morning or Friday morning before the game up at We3. So she would feed us. And again, just great community support. A lot of tradition was there and is still here. But yeah, that sophomore year, just a great moment to play for a team like that we had.
And I have to apologize to Jeff about this sophomore year. In the Bob Sanger record book that I made in 2020, I completely omitted your yards from the career rushing. And so when gave you these notes and you're like, these numbers aren't adding up. And I did the math and I looked at the record book and I was like, oh crap. So I shorted Jeff 990 yards on the career rushing list. I believe he was on the season list. I just, for some reason, didn't add up 88, 89, 90. And so you just mentioned Rick Sanger. Sorry, Rick, you are no longer 8th all time in career yards. 35 years later, Jeff Kudej passed you by a clerical error on my part. So you're 8th all time in rushing yards now because of the sophomore year that I didn't put in originally. So yeah, a lot of numbers to keep track of. So. But Brighton, let's go to your sophomore year, 2020. Little different. This little thing called COVID happened that year, and so what was different between your freshman year and sophomore year? What you guys had to do, how you had to do things differently to get through, social distancing and quarantining and all that.
Well, I mean, school was obviously different because that's when you had to wear masks and everything and like social distancing. And there was like, if you got someone next to you, contact tracing, like if someone next to you got sick and you were next to them, you had to get sent home too.
Yeah.
So it was definitely different. And it kind of, I don't know if it costed us, but kind of nipped us in the butt at the end of the year because when we had to play Grundy Center out here and Chase Cronman got sent home because he had COVID. That's one of our best linebackers that couldn't play in that game. So then I had to play defensive tackle and Ben had to play linebacker. So that kind of threw things off. So
And Kevin Eisman wasn't there that night either. He had COVID or was exposed or something. I'm not sure, but that hurt a little bit. Well, how was practice different? Did you guys have to do anything differently to avoid getting the whole team sent home?
Not really. No, we just made sure like if you were feeling sick, like stay home, like get better. Make sure the water bottles and stuff are cleaned, and then I think the coaches would spray our face masks and our like equipment every night to make sure like it was clean from all the germs and everything. But practice was just ran pretty much the same.
Yeah, I mean, how can you do it? I mean, I heard a couple schools doing it where like individual drills, you always drilled with the same couple guys, stuff like that. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? Because then if you're all hitting each other and it just doesn't matter. Yeah, made for a not as fun season, I'm sure. You guys were 9-2 that year. Like you said, you lost to Grundy in the quarters after beating HMS in the first round. That game against HMS was the first of, I think, 4 or 5 games you guys played them and some pretty good battles. But the thing that still gets me in that season, Iowa City Regina bumped down to A that year because they did a 1-year redistricting cycle because they weren't sure what was going to happen with COVID. Regina had no business being down in A. If they were still up in 1A like they should have been, and now they're 2A again, us and Grundy would not have played each other in the quarterfinals because
Really?
they take the top 4 teams and they try to separate them out so that the best 4 teams make it to the dome. We lost to Garner in game 1, so that cost us a top 4 seed. Regina's down there. If Regina's not down there, even if we do lose the Garner, they keep us and Grundy separate until the dome. So I still think we were a dome worthy team that year, especially with Cole Kelly at fullback and Ben Martinez, like you said earlier, great kicker, and Croneman kid. It was a good class of seniors. A lot of you younger guys were starting to step in. You personally had 2 fumble recoveries, 1 for a touchdown. What do you remember the touchdown that season? I can't remember what game it was.
I'm not sure.
The one that maybe fell in the end zone. I think you jumped on it. I can't remember what game that was.
Oh, I think I do kind of remember it. Yeah.
You're a
Yeah.
lineman. You get a touchdown. You better remember it. That was only a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think I do remember. It was,
What team?
I don't know the team, but it was in the end zone by the scoreboard, I think.
Okay. I'm just going to make an observation here. Your dad, who graduated in 1991, just went into detail for 5 minutes about a game from 1998. And you can't remember, and you're a lineman. You score a touchdown, you remember that the rest of your life. And you can't remember a touchdown from 3 years ago. Just an observation I made there. So
Us linemen aren't in it for the glory. We're in it for the work. So
exactly. We don't need our names in the paper. But I made sure you linemen, us linemen, got some recognition in my project I've been working on. So anyway, you had 13 tackles, including 4 for a loss that sophomore year. What'd you feel going into? You're going to be an upperclassman after this season. You're going to be a junior in 2021. What was your off-season work like? What was your attitude in the weight room? What kind of work were you putting into the off-season?
going into sophomore year or going into junior
Going
year?
into junior year after the sophomore year.
Well, after that Grundy game, I kind of felt like a lot of it was my fault because I had to play defensive tackle and I never played that all year. And I let up quite a bit of yards up the middle and stuff. So I took quite a bit of the blame myself for that. And so I was like, I don't want that to like ever happen again. So literally the day after that game, I started working out and stuff and started pushing myself. And then just being around like the teammates like Matthew Francis and then Kane and Braden and all of them, they were good guys to be around because they wanted it too. Like they experienced what it's like to win a state championship, and then they experienced what it's like to lose, and then they were going into their last year and they're like, we want to win another one.
Yeah.
So we all wanted to win, and it was something special. So all the work that like we put in, it was good work, and it obviously paid off. So
Yep, we'll get to that junior season for both of you here in a sec. I'm going to get to a few more sponsors, though. Miller and Son Golf Cars, family-owned operation with over 50 years of experience, called Skip or Jim at 843-4132, or check them out at millergolfcars.com. Thanks to In His Image Photography and Britt and Red, White, and Brew Coffee Company, owned by Ashley Mosier. Both in Britt. I believe Ashley's new coffee company is going to be at the Hobnob location. Contact her on Facebook. Reach out to Ashley. She's doing a great job for things in the Brit community. Thanks to Katie's Salon and Tanning in Titonka for sponsoring the podcast. Reach out to Katie at 515-928-2303. Thanks to Mr. Paul Hauge as well for sponsoring the podcast, and the Brit Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruise, owned by Mojo Productions owner Jared Wingert. I believe the first one is July 19th, because today's the 6th. Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks from yesterday. Up in downtown Britt. Give Jared a call at 515-408-1074, or check him out at BritCarCruise.com. And then thanks to the Showalter family and Window World of Mason City. They're a proud supporter of the podcast. Once an Eagle, always an Eagle. Fly High Coach Sanger and Joey Showalter. All right, you guys are upperclassmen now. Junior season. Jeff, this is 1989 for you. You guys went 6-2 and missed the playoffs in the first year of West Hancock football. This was the season that we merged from Britt into West Hancock. I see you're already giving him a hard time for that. Yeah, in Brighton's world, 6-2. Holy cow, the world's falling apart. But back in our days, every once in a while we had a 7-2, 6-2 season, but it's been a while. What was that merger like for you guys, Jeff? I've talked to others on the podcast that were a part of those teams, and they said for the most part the kids really got along well and things went smoothly. But what do you remember about that?
As far as the transition went, we didn't really. The only thing Coach Sang would say is your position was open up to anybody that came from Kanawha. You had to earn it.
Yep.
And they had Chad Lane was their fullback, and he made it clear to me that it was going to be you or him. You had to earn that spot.
Yep.
So that definitely lit a fire on me. It's like, no way in heck I'm giving up that spot my junior year.
Yep.
But he had a way, Coach Sanger did, of motivating you, blending the two teams together, going from Britt to West Hancock. We knew some of the guys from there already. So the transition there, I don't think we felt like we were divided. And I think the only thing that it did, it changed our class size to 2A that year.
Yep.
Other than that, the transition wasn't bad at all.
Yeah. And you guys knew for a couple years it was coming. It's not like the day before school started, they're like, by the way, Kanawha kids will be here. I mean, there was a slow transition into that consolidation. So, yeah.
But I do say Garner came to Brett that year, and we did beat them 37-7. So
Nice.
that was a good win for us. Osage, I think we were there, and we only lost 7-0.
Yep.
So I mean, could have been worse. I wish we would have beat them. They had a weird defense. I can't remember what it was called, but it was, we and that's when we lost to Forest City 2 in overtime by 6 points.
Yeah.
That's where our 2 losses came from that year. But there was, toward the end of the year, we had a 4-way tie for second place. Osage was 7-0 or 8-0, and we were tied with 4-way tie. Yeah, it was. We had 2 quarterbacks, I think, at that time. Brent Niven and Kevin Eisman was quarterback for our JV or our varsity team.
Yeah.
And both of them, Kevin was a little more mobile, and Brent was a little bit more on the pass. We had great linemen again: Jason Daniels, Ricky Whipple, Scott Mendoza, Travis Hagan, Brian Doble. We had a lot of good athletes on our team. It just was a tough conference again that year, especially when you have 4 teams tied for second place. I mean, but overall, I mean, would have been nice to get to the playoffs again, but it just didn't happen that year.
Yeah. And that old system, I mean, there were 16 teams making the playoffs, but 2 losses, you were about done.
Yeah.
My freshman and senior years, we were 7-2, didn't make the playoffs, and both those teams would have won at least a playoff game, I still say, but 2 regular season losses, there was no chance of getting in. Now you can go 3-6 and you're in.
Well, I think even back our sophomore year, Forest City didn't even like playing us. Well, again, you're a 1A school beating a 3A school, 1 loss to a 1A, you were done.
Yeah.
You're out of the playoffs after that loss to us that year.
Yep.
And
we
did not like us.
Yeah, we made the playoffs in '88 with 2 losses, but that's rare. I mean, it was very uncommon to make it. But yeah, the bigger the class you were and you played smaller schools, there was point systems that went against you for several years. And yeah, my dad played for Buffalo Center in the late '70s. He said Osage hated it because they were 3A and they'd play Buffalo Center, who's 1A, and they'd have to win by 100 to make it even be worth their time because it would affect them in the points. And I'm like, why are we going by points? Just wins and losses, and yeah, go with it. So anyway, you had 728 yards on 152 carries that season. Rick Sanger was second with 551. You again scored 54 points and ran in 8 touchdowns. I got to ask you about defense though. Were you reserved for offense only back in the day? You had seven tackles that
For
year.
starting my sophomore year through the rest of the high school, we had more than enough linemen. I
Yeah.
think Coach Sanger just wanted me to be fresh because I did all the specialty teams also. But I think he just wanted fresh legs when we came on offense to be ready to roll. But again, we had more than enough linemen. In junior high, I played DN, which I love that position. I would have played that in a heartbeat. But we just had good kids at those positions already. And I
Yeah.
think he just wanted fresh legs as a running back to be able, when we had the ball, you're going. So I
Yeah.
think that was his philosophy.
I put that in my notes at that era, even though you guys didn't get real far in the playoffs in that era, you guys were just known for stout defense and just a bunch of bad dudes in the linebacker and lineman core. Just a lot of studs up there and a lot of no nonsense type of guys. So
Yeah, a lot of people didn't like playing us because, like what you just said, we hit hard, tackle hard,
yeah,
and our defense showed that. And our O line, they running the 45 dive or the 344 dive, they made the holes. They made big holes for you to go through,
yeah,
and especially like my sophomore year, Greg Byers. I tell you what, him and Brian Nedved and Travis and Scott Medusor, those guys made huge holes for me to find. And Steve Kelly and Rick Sanger were my leading blockers going through there. And Kevin always put your hand on your back and push you right through the hole. It's just, when you have that type of people in front of you, that's what makes great running backs. It's not the running backs that makes the team. If you don't have a front line, you're not going anywhere.
yep, exactly. And it's funny you mentioned the hard hitting. That's back in '89 you're talking about, but I was just up in Buffalo Center at my parents this last week, and on the 4th, we went to Bancroft for the 4th of July parade there. Buffalo Center doesn't really do much anymore on the 4th. And my cousin lives in Sway City, so that's North Union Schools. Her husband's from that area originally, and so he knows everybody. And we got talking about that. And he goes, "Yeah, I have this kid that we know from the community." And we were talking about stuff like that. And he said, "Oh, I just hate playing West Hancock because they just hit the tar out of you." I asked the kid's name and I already forgot what it was, but he's saying, "Oh, just they just keep smacking you every single play, and you just get tired of it after a while." And I was like, "That's music to my
That's
ears."
that's Coach Sanger. His belief was, I'm going to hit you, hit you, hit you until we can't run that play anymore, and then we'll change someplace else. But teaching over at West Fork, with those kids over there, you hear a lot of stories, and they always ask you, how in the heck are you guys good every single year?
Yep.
And I think it has to do with the coaching staff. I also think it has to do with the number of athletes that decide to stay in Britt or Kanawha and be part of the community after they're graduated and have families here.
Yep.
You got the Steve Kelly. How many kids came out of that family that are athletes? You got Ted Smith, Mike Smith. You got the Hagans, Boothroyds.
Yep.
You got us. Just how many people stay here, and they were good athletes in high school, and they just carried on when they have their own kids. And
Yep.
but again, I think it comes down to the discipline that's back in junior high and all the way through high school. You have a really good support team of coaches, and you don't know any better. You don't know anything different than to play hard and win.
Yep.
And like this guy here, after his season was done, he basically said, "We're winning next year's state championship. There's no doubt about it. We're winning." And he lived in the gym every stinking day after school. Where's Brighton? He's in the gym. And I think it was Coach Johnson that told him, "I want you to weigh how much?"
It's like, so I was like probably 185. He wanted me at like 200 at least, like 205 probably.
And he literally, I would say, for the last 2 years of high school, eat us out of the house. He would come home from school at 4 o'clock, and I'd show up and go, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm having supper right now." I'm looking at my wife. I go, "It's not even after 5 yet." 7 o'clock would roll around. I go, what are you doing? I'm having supper again. And then 9 o'clock would roll around and he's having more food again. I go like, what in the world? But he's very disciplined. He's very disciplined on goals and mindset and studies the game really well. And he the coaches even told him this year how coachable he is, you know. And when you have a kid that listens to your coaches, you know, you can go far with them. But again, I just think we're blessed that we have so many great coaches, the community that supports us and stands behind us. Um, you know, it's just a complete circle of everybody giving their time and helping out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and oh man, that just reminds me of my junior to senior year right there. You're talking about eating out of house and home. My parents had the barn back then. My dad would cut up the ribeyes that they would have on the menu, and I'd get all the end pieces plus all the baked potatoes and everything else. And my dad's friends would come in and watch me eat 30 ounces of meat, and they'd be like, "This is why your parents are losing money out here. You know, you're gonna run them out of business." But I was like, "Oh, so much fun. Had a blast." So.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's get to the big 2021 season here. As we alluded to earlier, and if you're watching this, you already know this, but 2021, another state title for West Hancock, our fourth title in school history. It's 1973, 96, 2019, and 2021. So we didn't have to wait 23 years for another state title. Kind of into the we're in this golden era of West Hancock football right now. We've been good since, even before Jeff started playing, but these last 4 or 5 years have been probably the most special chunk of time in the history of our program. But this time, Brighton, you played a major role on this team. Two-way starter. Defensively, this is my favorite team of all time because this team just did not make mistakes. They just played almost perfect football every single week. Defensively, we gave up 60 points in 13 games. The starters only gave up like 3 of those touchdowns, and it was usually the points were scored after the game had been decided. You individually, you had 1 fumble recovery, 46 tackles, 2 sacks, and 6 tackles for loss. And you became one of those players that I kind of compare you to Taylor Vanden Weinboom when I played. Taylor was an all-stater and he was an All-American at Central, but his senior year he had like 32 tackles, but that was only because the other teams knew to run the other direction. They were always like, don't go that way towards that guy, and you ended up being that kid. I thought. My favorite memory from that season in the semifinals, Rick Sanger and I drove together. We tend to carpool and talk about the same old stuff every time we're in the car together, but have a good time going to games. And that day, he had to be there extra early for team pictures because he's on the coaching staff. And we get to Cedar Falls, and I'm like, I'm just gonna sit out in the car here and take a little nap or something. He goes, "Oh, just walk in with me. No one, there's not security at the door. Just come in." So I go into the dome underneath with you guys as you're coming into the stadium, and I'm just kind of sitting over in the corner by where the coaches are taping ankles and stuff. And you were over there, kind of getting your mindset ready and stretching a little bit. And I was like, "Who's that kid?" And I mean, you were jacked. And Paul Francis was there, and he goes, "Oh, that's Brighton Kudej. And if you think he's good now," because I knew who you were from watching all the games, I just only saw you with the helmet and shoulder pads on. And he was like, "Yeah, you just wait till next year. This kid's going to be a really good one." So I just remember being down underneath the dome and watching you guys get ready for the game. And it's kind of like what Jeff was saying earlier before that Garner game in '88. It was silent. Kids were focused. You just feel it that it was going to be a good day for us. And it was. I think we won that, 38-0 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's just how I remember. Just it had been 17 years since I had been on the inside of a West Hancock football pregame, and I got goosebumps thinking about when I played how that pregame, ritual was just great. So anyway, you guys won that state title 19-14 over Grundy Center. Again, Grundy Center. That's just a common theme here. Talk about winning title number 2 in your first 3 years.
Well, the beginning of the season, like I don't know, just going into it, you could just tell like it just felt special, and it just felt right, you know. Like I don't know, it's hard to explain. I'll always say this till the day I die. It was the best team I could have ever played on in my life. Like that team was just special all the way around. Like our work ethic, and then our relationship with each other, from because we've played football with each other since third and fourth grade,
Yeah.
and then senior and junior year we're finally playing together again, championship game and everything. Like that's everything we ever worked for, and it was just from beginning of the season, the Garner game when we go over there, go play, and then we play a couple plays or whatever, and then it gets rain delayed until like 11 o'clock at night or something.
Yeah.
We're sitting in there in the locker room like a dog chewing on a piece of meat. Like we're going crazy in there, and then we go back out there. Garner's like half asleep, and we're like 100 mile an hour just kicking their butts, and then playing Hartley. Like that'll always be a good game.
Was that 2 times you played her?
Yeah, us and them don't always get along, and those games are kind of fun, but
Yeah.
I was gonna say what I remember about that Hartley team. I don't know if it was the second time or the first time. We played them once regular season at Britt. Then they came back for playoffs to Britt again.
They weren't happy about that.
They first said that Coach Sanger had the game rigged because of the refs. But then what really lit a fire under me as a parent, here they are on our practice field before the game. Instead of being on the football field, they're on our practice field warming up. They didn't want to come out on the field with them. And I just like, what are you doing on our field instead of out there where you should be at?
like we were already like fired up to play them and stuff, and kind of that grudge there, and then they go and practice or warm up on our practice field. Like that sends it through the roof and everything. Like
They said there was no reason that game should have been in Britt, and so that was like their form of protest. I'm like, come on, what are we doing? Yeah, the regular season game was 20-6, and they only scored on that trick play, I think, in the second quarter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they did nothing on us. That playoff game in the quarterfinals, I believe, was at 27-0, and we pretty much completely shut them down. Matthew Francis, he's an all-timer defensively, and granted, only had 1 year on offense running the football, but he was right up there statistically and just the way he took over games. Talk about Matthew a little bit, the leader he was.
I love that guy. I still talk to him like every day pretty much on my phone, but that's the type of fullback and like leader that you want. Like all of us could trust him with literally anything. He would run like 6 miles, 10 miles a day sometimes in the summer and stuff, and do workouts. Like there was one day he jogged to Britt to lift or whatever, then jogged to wherever his dad had him working at, then jogged to the dentist appointment, then jogged back home, and all in one day. And he had like insane amount of steps and miles, and like that's one guy you can trust because you know he's put the work in, he's bled for it, and then he also had like a super strong faith in God and everything. So that's just all around like the best role model you could ever ask for. So if you got him running the ball, you know that like it's in good hands, and he's not going to quit. He's not going to give up on you even when things get tough. So yeah.
Kane Zool too. I grew to like Kane a lot, not just as a player, but as a person as well. Like you said with Matthew, best open field tackler possibly in school history. Just always in position, he's not a big guy at all, but man, he did everything right. That defense was fun to watch, and just again, that'll be my favorite team. It'll be, I think, tough to top this team because just did things the right way, that's for sure. Yeah, so you got 2 titles in 3 seasons. Your dad already talked about it a little bit, but like going into that senior year, it was like, hey, we've won 2. That senior class could say that we're the first class to ever win 2. You're probably already thinking 3 shortly after the season's over.
Yeah, like the winning the state championship that sunk in. I let it sink in. I enjoyed it, and then a couple days went by or whatever, week or 2, and you're like, we could probably go for 3, and that'd be something special. So
yeah,
we didn't wait too long before we got back to work.
Yep. And that's the thing, like we talked about earlier, how some other schools, kids are like, I don't want my records broken. I want to be known as the best team ever. Zool and Francis, those guys, you know for a fact they were your biggest cheerleaders that next season. They're like, oh yeah, even though we can say we've won 2, it'd be even cooler if our program got another one. Not just we want to be known as the best. We want this program to be as good as it can be, and that's what I think makes our school so special. So let's get to that senior year for both of you, Jeff. 1990. You guys won a conference title that year, but kind of had a disappointing end to your football career. A 13-12 loss in the first round to North Iowa up in Buffalo Center, I believe.
Yep.
Beat them fairly handily in the regular season. My dad's good friends with their head coach, Don Anderson. Don put together a good game plan that night, apparently. Maybe we didn't play as well. But talk about that last game, that last season, and playing for Coach Bob Sanger and Gene Perkins.
As far as the season goes, that was my first win over Osage, and I think that was here at home. We beat them. What did I write down here? No, I don't have it written down. But we shut them out on our own home field. And it was, I mean, for being that big of a school and how talented they were the last 3 years leading up to that, to shut them down at our home field, that was just a great game right there alone. We only had one loss that year, which really hurts to be the team of, unfortunately, it was Garner. And that was at Garner too. That one stung. Not gonna say it did. That one kind of ticked us off. But again, Northwood Kensett again, a really good team in the conference. We beat them, so I think we were 6-1 overall going into the playoffs. And but again, we had just a lot of athletes returning, just a lot of talent. And my mission at least was to get to play Emmitsburg. And we had to get through that first round of playoffs to get to Emmitsburg. I wanted to play them so bad.
Yeah.
And I just remember going to Buffalo Center for that first game. And before the game started, Coach Sanger got up in my face and basically told me, I'm going to run you every single play this quarter until you score a touchdown. And if you can't handle it, I'll find somebody that can. And it's like, what are you going to tell Coach Sanger? He goes, can you do it? I said, yeah, I can do it. And we literally ate that clock down just to 3 or 4 minutes left in the game, or that quarter, in scoring. But he ran the 245 dive constantly. It was 3 to 5 yards every hit, and just boom, boom. It was slow pace, but we made it all the way down there and scored that touchdown. But we went in at halftime 14-0, and we came back out, and that, I don't know if it was just in one quarter they scored those 2 touchdowns. I can't remember if it was the third quarter that they scored those 2. But I think it was from some pass plays that they scored on us. But then after they scored, oh no, wait, they did score in the fourth quarter. It was I caught the ball on the kickoff, and we got to around midfield someplace, and we got the ball down. Can't remember. We were in field goal range, and Ricky Singer was going. We had to do something to stop the clock, and so we had a penalty. And we were going to have Ricky kick a field goal to win the game. And for some reason, they started the clock on a penalty, which we thought you couldn't do that. I don't know what the ruling is. So the game was over on a penalty.
Yeah.
Instead of giving us the chance to kick the field goal after the penalty, we went up to the line and got set. Apparently the clock already started, and the game ended like that.
Huh.
It would have been nice to see if Ricky could have made that field goal.
Yeah. What happened on the other 2 touchdowns? Because we lost 13-12. So did we miss the extra points? Did we go for 2?
Yes.
Do you remember how that went?
We tried 2 field goals that were 2 attempts, and we didn't get them.
Okay. Yep.
So, but yeah, it was a disappointing thing to have happen. But again, I mean, what could you do? You
Yeah.
know, so I just hung my head high. You know, we had a good season. Unfortunately, we came up short that game. Um, just took it like a man and shook their hands and walked off the field.
Yep.
So,
And you mentioned Emmitsburg. North Iowa went to Emmitsburg that next week and lost like 25-8 or something like that.
yeah,
Then Emmitsburg lost to Wapsie. This is just me knowing way more about high school football than I should. And then Wapsie, I think, lost in the final. So it was one of those like every team just, it was one of those like we could have, hypothetically gone all the way or lost to
I
Emmitsburg in the next
I
round.
think we would have had a better game than North Iowa would have. How they played Emmitsburg, I think we would have done a lot better. Just got caught off guard with some passes because North Iowa at the time was known for being a passing team. So,
yeah, and that was you got to think that's probably North Iowa Super Bowl right there. They beat Britt in a playoff game, and whatever happened after that was just whatever. So,
and I blame it was Halloween, so I blame it on that.
there you go. It's cursed. Yeah. Statistically, that was your best season, 1,120 yards and 7 touchdowns. You're one of 36 Britt or West Hancock Eagles to ever have 1,000-yard season or better. You scored 94 points that year, 3 catches for 45 yards, 3 tackles. Does Brighton ever give you a hard time about your lack of tackles compared to his, or is he aware that you're a one-way player?
I know he's a one-way player.
Okay, but still, you can give your dad a hard time about something, you might as well do it, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So in the record book, Jeff, this is not just the Bob Sanger era now. This is 1899 to present day. You're 5th for most 20-plus carry games. You did that 9 times. Your 243 carries in 1999 is 14th all time. Your 3rd all time in career carries with 597. To put that in perspective, Tate Hagen is 2nd with 778, and Chris Schlugger ran the ball 955 times in his career. Those are just crazy numbers. You had 1,500 plus rushing games, which is 4th all time, tied for 4th. You never had a 200 plus yard game, though. I always attribute that to there were 6 guys that could run the ball just as well as each other on those teams, and there was just only one football to go around. So,
I was going to say that Coach Sanger was strong on believing. I think it was our sophomore year and my senior year. We had a good handful of blowouts.
yeah,
And by the starting of the 3rd quarter, we were varsity players were pretty much done. Kind of like today. You know, you got to give those underclassmen that time to play to get them developed for the next year.
yeah,
And that's you have to do that. You have to get those kids in there, especially when you're up, 30-0, 3rd quarter. You better be playing those younger kids so they can get that feel for what varsity is like. But that, again, I had a couple close games getting close at 200. But again, we needed those younger underclassmen getting in to get that time to play. And it was a good feeling that, as an upperclassman walking off the field in the 3rd quarter, because you did your job. As a team, we did our job. And by doing that, we got those younger kids to come in and get a chance to play and get some time on varsity.
yep, definitely. You do have a school record, though. You're tied with a bunch of guys, but most 500 plus yard seasons with 3. Because again, you started that sophomore year. You're tied for that record with Chris Schlugger, Colton Francis, Joseph Smith, Rick Sanger, Tate Hagen, Zach Schlugger, and Cole Kelly. Pretty good company to be in. Your 2,838 career rushing yards is good for 8th all time. Again, sorry, Rick Sanger, you got passed and you haven't played for years. And the guy that passed you hasn't played for years either. But curious this year, Cale Zool and Mitchell Smith, they might have a chance to pass you. Hypothetically, a guy could go for 12 to 1,500 yards and get close to you, so you never know. But again, a lot of good ball. This team's going to be stacked with skill guys, so there's going to be only so many carries for each guy to have, but you never know on a given night. Some guy could crack 300 yards and then average 100 some after that. You just never know. And then your 23 career rushing touchdowns is good for 21st all time in the record book. So just a lot of fun to look at those numbers now that we're past. I don't want current players looking at stats too much because they get consumed. But us old guys, it's fun to look back on and see what was done and how it stacks up to the current guys. So, all right, Brett.
I was just gonna say before I forget again. Back in my sophomore year, Coach Sanger, about halfway into the season, when Kevin Sanger was our quarterback his senior year, we started running audibles.
Yeah.
And Kevin was really good at coming up to the line and be able to see that defense and adjust and to be able to run a different play at the line and for our offensive line to adjust, the backfield to adjust. And we got really good at that. And it was just neat. And then the other thing he added was we used to for the fullback, you'd run a 242 or a 343 trap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somewhere in the season, he changed that and added 2 more plays in where it became a 243 or a 342 trap where you were going up the hole by yourself. He was always looking for different things. And in high school, one time he had me, because on punts, I was the guy by the punter. He said, okay, we're going to snap the ball to you since you're the fullback. You're going to run off to the right tackle. Let's see what happens. The rest of that season, every time, watch number 4, watch number 4. He's going to get the ball. I mean, we only ran it once, and they kept trying to key on me that they thought I was going to run the ball again the rest of the season for that. So I was always thinking of different creative ways to get the other team off their game, and he did a really good job at it.
And saying Kevin Sanger had the ability to audible. Is that when he audibled into a QB sneak every single time for all his touchdowns?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we know how you think, Kevin. We got you. So.
But I mean, when you looked at Kevin his senior year, he was a big dude for quarterback. He was built and his size, and for him, I mean, to do a quarterback sneak and get 3, 4, 5 yards at a time, he did it well, and he was able to do it, and I think that really helped our team out a lot.
Definitely. All right, Brighton, let's get to your senior year, 2022, still less than a year ago. Your class finished the best 4-year run in school history. You guys went 12-1, third trip to the state championship game in those 4 years. Again, I still think we were a state title game team in 2020. I think us and Grundy should have been there in 2020 without all the COVID stuff in Regina. But in this 2022 season, you guys lost to Grundy Center, your 4th year in a row playing them in the playoffs. This was one game that didn't come down to the last minute of the game. Still stings, I know that, but it's a good thing that it stings because it means you cared. But man, every other West Hancock football player not in your graduating class would have killed to be in your guys' position. Go 47-3 in 4 years, win 2 titles, being another one, quarterfinalists, 4 district titles. You guys never lost a district game, which is just crazy. What you guys did in those 4 years is pretty incredible. What can you say about your senior year and any aspect of it? Go ahead.
Well, going into the season, like in the summer workouts and stuff, Sanger always said, and he says it every year, but when you're a senior, it kind of hits different because it applies more to you. But he says, take in like the time that you're here and like cherish it and like relish it because it's going to be gone in the blink of an eye. And before you know, it's going to be the end of the season. It's going to be postseason. It's going to be in the dome in the championship game. Hopefully that's where we'd be and where we did end up. But going into that season, I kind of had that mindset of sometimes I don't like practice. Like it's practice, but I'm going to go in with that mindset of I'm going to have a good practice. I'm going to cherish it. I'm going to take it serious, but I'm also going to have like fun with it and like enjoy it, and like enjoy every single moment in the locker room with my guys on the field, whatever. So going into that season and throughout the season, I just like tried practicing more gratitude for everything. And it definitely made like the end of the season a lot more painful because uh just to see like just to have it end that way, it just definitely stings. But looking back at it now, it's like I'm still grateful for all the experiences and everything, like everything that happened. And I'll never know like why we lost that game. Like God has a plan for everything and like a purpose for it. So there could be a reason why like we lost that game that I'll never even know. But it could have like benefited me or benefited the other guys on the team. So
Yeah. And Grundy was just phenomenal. Like there was not a weak point on that team, and they're so well coached as well. There's just, I mean, yeah, tough way to end it being your senior year. But again, I missed the playoffs my senior year. Jeff's team lost in the first round. Man, I would have killed to end my career in that game. Win or loss, but obviously a win is a lot better. But man, you guys, your 4-year run, like I said again, 47-3, 3 trips to the championship game. Looking back in those stands and seeing just tons of West Hancock fans there, had to have been just a pretty cool experience for you overall.
yeah, it makes you realize like who's really behind you and like who's really got your back. Like when you're grinding all off season or in season and everything, you're kind of in this bubble. Like you don't really see like all the outside stuff. You're just in this bubble grinding by yourself and with your teammates and stuff. But when you go on like on Friday nights or you go in the dome or you win those big games or especially the losses you really realize who's like with you. And it was one of the most special things to like come home from losing the championship game, but the gym after the pep rally is still packed and all the people there are still supporting us, are still clapping for us. And you just really realize all the support and like everything from this community. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And that night I had to go back to Truro for parent teacher conferences. I took the day off as a personal day, but I still will be back there by about 4:30. And I obviously talk about West Hancock football a lot because when I got to conferences and the first couple parents came in, they're like, "Hey, we heard about the game. We're sorry." It's like I talk to my students about it a lot. Um, so it's a big deal to a lot of people. In the fall for me, man, it's something to look forward to. It's fun. I know the work you guys put into it, and obviously winning is great. But at the end of the day, just the way the program is put together and the way people conduct themselves, and that's why in the book I wrote, I asked Brighton to send me a write up about what West Hancock football meant to him. Because honestly, and Jeff, I think will probably say the same thing as Dad, but people noticed, people looked to you and thought very highly of you as a kid and as a player and the way you handled yourself. So I asked Brighton to give me a little write up, and that's the very end of a 220-page section of the history of West Hancock football ends with what you have to say about West Hancock football. So, Dad, what do you think about watching him play for 4 years and how he went about business on and off the field?
It was really special to watch him grow and develop from way back in. Watch him play fifth and sixth grade football to junior high football. Seeing him develop into a young man on the field his high school years, and I remember the first time that he got to experience the championship game, or the second one, or was it the first one? We didn't know where you go as a parent to congratulate them after the game was done.
Yeah,
So, and we kind of had to find our way down. You're freshman year, right?
Yeah.
Find our way in where he was out there and how many people were down there outside there, and the congratulations, the pictures. But it's just really neat to see him evolve into a leader on the field. Again, his work ethics, his discipline, his coachability, from having people tell me how, how they perceived him to be somebody that they could coach and train him and transform into this great athlete. Um, but yeah, seeing him, I think it was in the dome, his second championship game, getting him to see him get after Grundy and just take some of those guys down. I would not want to be on the receiving end. I definitely would not want to be on the receiving end when he was coming at you. But you can definitely see over the years how he evolved into what he is now, and looking forward to see how he goes on to college to play for Dort and gets to try out a new position there. But I think the biggest thing was at awards night when he received the final award for citizenship. And I think that one just speaks volume to what type of kid he is, or a young man he is now. It's just, I never knew much about that award until they started talking about it. And then my head's going, I wonder if Brighton's going to get that. And all of a sudden they said his name. And, for me, I guess there's in that grade, I think he's more than well deserving for that award he got. It just speaks of who he is. He's there to help people. And yeah, couldn't be more proud of a kid like him.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I think that's a good spot to kind of wrap things up here. I want to thank you guys again. Next up on the podcast, the one I was supposed to do last night with the 1977 through 79 volleyball teams, we had to postpone that. So hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have that. And then I'll have Ben Muller, former teacher and coach at West Hancock Middle School, and then he was the high school principal. Brian Peterson, current PE teacher, former coach and athletic director. Members of the 1956 wrestling team. And then I don't know the next one because I've had to shift my lineup so many times. I don't even have on my paper here who's after that. So it's been an interesting summer of getting podcasts scheduled. Any last minute things either of you want to throw out? I always leave this last little chunk open as in case we forgot anything or any shout outs you didn't get to yet.
Well, I will say that like you never realize, like, in practice, like, all the things that we do. Like, for linemen, we always practice taking the right steps, and we focus so much on, like, the little details and doing the little things right and all this and that. Well, I never realized how much, like, all of it, like, truly meant until I went to college. Because once I went for, like, a freshman camp, and we did some drills and stuff, and I was like, wait a second, we, like, did this in high school already, and, like, I already know, like, what to do, and all these other kids are like, well, how do I do this? And so I'm grateful and thankful that, like, we have such good coaches here that, like, teach those principles and disciplines at an early age, so that it just prepares you and it makes you so much better. And if you go to the next level, you're already ready and you already know what you're doing, so you can just continue to rise from there.
Jeff, anything else that's on your mind?
I think he said it.
Perfect. We'll end with that. And I always end this with Go Eagles.